might rain today.
It's not my fault. Erev Tov, everyone. This week's parsha reveals a fundamental difference in outlook between the Rambam, what we would call the rationalist view, and between Rashi, which has a more supernatural take on things. This week's parsha, we have Makos, the plagues that were visited on the Egyptians. So the first of the Makos is Dam, water that turned into blood. The Torah itself testifies that the Egyptian Khartoumim, whoever they were able to replicate that makkah. They were also able to turn water into blood. And therefore, it's no surprise that Paro was not impressed. The same thing was due with Svardeya, with the frogs. The Egyptian Khartoumim were able to somehow bring out frogs as well. Only on the later Makos did they say, Etzba Elohimi, that's beyond us. We can't do it anymore. So the question arises, how did they do it? How do you turn water into blood? How do you get from one frog many frogs? So Rashi says that it was through the power of what we call kshofim, kishuf. It's a magical power. It's a power of the occult. When you go into Kabbalah, it's a power that comes from the left and not the right. It's a negative power. But there's such a power in the world. It's an idea like the Satan, that somehow in God's arrangement of the universe, there is this negative force that exists and has influence, and it inserts itself into human behavior. So Rashi says that the Khartoumim were real. They had the power because of this occult knowledge to turn water into blood, to bring on frogs. So if that's the case, we can understand Paro, why he didn't agree to them. He wasn't impressed by the makkah. But Kaviochel, how do we understand the Rabboni Shalom and Moshe? I mean, if you want to give a makkah and make an impression, that's not the way to do it. And we see that what it takes later. Even with all the makkahs, power doesn't give in till makkahs b'choros. The Rambam explains here. The Rambam says there's no power of the occult. There's no Maaseh Shofim. You'll notice the Rambam in his Perush, the Mishnayos, And into what he writes about the Gemara, he never includes the parts of the Gemara that discuss shadim or disembodied spirits or any. The Rambam doesn't deal with that at all. Which naturally brought about great criticism of him. But to the Rambam, it wasn't real. To Rashi, it's real. And the Rambam says, what did the Khartoumim do? He said, Kulon achizas einayim. It is all tricks of the magician. It's Las Vegas. If you're a very good magician, you can perform wonderful tricks. And people can't figure out, how did you do that? But it's all fake. It's not really any power at all. So the Rambam says the Khartoumim, everything that they did was only achizas einayim. It was only fraud, fake. And Paro knows it's fake. And therefore, that's why those vakas began. Because now he sees, really, without achizas einayim, Moshe is not a magician. But the Rambam says, Paro thought that Moshe was a magician. So when they throw down the sticks and it becomes snakes and then becomes sticks, so they said, so Moshe is also a great magician, right? I got a room full of magicians, so good. I'm not impressed. So to the Rambam, it's all achizas einayim. This doesn't exist. Now that's a fundamental difference in belief. We find it reflected. See, I'm stopping the rain. In 2 months, I'll make it warmer. The Rambam in the Pirush HaMishnah is to Psochim, to the 5th parak in Psochim. So the Gemara there says that Chizkiah Melech did 6 things on his own. Al shlosha hodulu chachomim, al shlosha lo hodulu. 3 things they agreed with, and 3 things they disagreed with. And one of them, he made 2 Nissans instead of 2 Adors. There's the Gemara there. One of the things that it's mentioned is Gondaz Sefer HaRefuos. He took the book of Refuos of healing and he took it out of circulation. He put it away so that people couldn't read it. Rashi says the reason he did it is so that people would pray. They would say, Refainu, if you have, if you have the cure in your hand, you don't daven, right? Because it's not, you don't consider it to be a problem. You have a headache, so you take 2 aspirin and it's cured, Tylenol or whatever. So in order to make people, the Sefer Refuos, according to Rashi, worked, the person got ill, so he looked it up in the Sefer Refuos, and it told him what to do to heal himself, and he was healed. So why should he daven? Why should he pray for refuah? So in order that people should rely on Shamayim and not on pills, so the Chizkiah Melech put away the Sefer Refuos. The Rambam doesn't mention Rashi by name. He says only Chocham Echad. But the Rambam says chas v'sholem to say such a pshat. If you have a refuah in your hand, then certainly you want people to use the refuahs. What do you mean you want to? Where did we ever hear such a thing? But a goyim lahavdil elef avdolos, you know, they call it Christian Science. Pray. Don't take medicine. Don't go to a doctor. Chas v'sholem to say things like that, the Rambam says. So he says, what does it mean, gonna sefer refuos? He said the sefer refuos was all superstitions, was quack medicine. It was on the internet. People relied on it, but he says instead of healing, it killed. So therefore, that's why he put it away. Because putting it away was a positive thing, because it was a source of illness and even death to people. And the Rambam writes Be'arichus, it's a whole long essay in the Perush HaMishnayos, and usually the Perush HaMishnayos is enormously concise. 3-4 sentences, and that's all on every Mishnah. With the golden language of the Rambam. And here he lets it go. And he writes, the only reason I'm writing this at such great length is because there's a Chochem Echad that he wrote that you're supposed to pray and not pay attention to these things. That the Sefer Refuos was positive. He said it was negative. So again, that reveals the fundamental difference in how we look at things. So that's reflected in this parish regarding the makos that existed in Mitzrayim, and the makos that the Khartoumim could make. To the Rambam, they could make no makos, and therefore that's why it should have made an impression, and that's why Paro is wrong. To Rashi, it's because they use the occult, they use the shadim, so to speak, to help make the miracles, the kishuv, and that we're not supposed to do. But that kishuv exists, yes, it does, and that it can bring about makos if people employ it to do so. So this is an interesting view into two completely different views by two of the great pillars of the Jewish people regarding these types of events and how to look at things. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Rotza Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakas Yisrael V'fichal Chirba Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Aman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.